Many of us have wanted to write a book, a novel maybe, something gripping that shoots straight to the top of the bestsellers charts and shoots us to fame and fortune. Unfortunately, not many of us manage to write it. There's never enough time, too many distractions, nowhere to write, friends are too critical. There's always reasons or excuses why not to write. Well, former Merseyside taxi driver Brian Formby is one person who has written a book and got it published. It's called Dark Side of the River. It's a gritty Depression era between the wars police drama set, as you might guess from the cover, in Liverpool. I asked Brian where he got the idea for the novel.
Well, I've always been fascinated by American noir, especially classic American noir, such as The Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep. All of Raymond Chandler's work I really love. And always having an ambition to be a writer, I decided to try my hand at a noir thriller, only set in a city that I know and love. And Liverpool really lends itself to the noir character, I think. And when I started writing, it just seemed to flow in a film-like way, seeing it in my mind's eye as a movie. And each sort of set piece of the book, of the story, seems to fit in so well with the city that in the end, the city itself became another character in the story, if you like. And I found as I moved around the city in my mind, parts of the story leapt out at me and drove me, if you like. So in many ways, the city itself drove the story and fitted in perfectly with the noir image.
Brian says he'd always wanted to be a writer, and by his own admission had bored all his friends to death telling them how much he wanted to be an author. So when he retired, he had no more excuses not to do it. Depression-era Liverpool, with its hardships, the rise of socialism, the hand-to-mouth existence that many people faced, lent itself as a backdrop for his story. Having a good idea for a story is one thing, but how do you actually get it started? How do you start writing on that very first blank page?
Being an uneducated writer, I just went by instinct. And I began the story. I had the characters, and I had the inspiration from certain points of Liverpool history. And I just went for it, basically. And I just mixed these up in this huge theatre of depressed Liverpool in the 1930s, and it just grew. Each it wasn't hard to do.
So it sounds a bit organic. Did you not map out the story first?
I didn't map the story out first. It was organic, very much so. But once I had down the first draft, then it became a process of structure and editing and elimination. And I don't think it's possible to sit down and write a novel straight off and that's it. You do have to go back and you see where you tripped up, where characters have sort of not done what they should have done, or you've repeated yourself too many times. And it's also it's a growing process. I never thought I could read and reread and reread a book so many times. Initially, it was around about 150,000, 160,000 words, and I had to edit all that down.
Tell me about the discipline of writing. Did you have to manacle yourself to the PC every day?
Very much so, yeah. Initially, no, because I enjoyed the process so much. And once the first draft was down, you tend to think, oh, I've done this now. Wow, this is fantastic. And then a month later, you'll read through and you think, oh, no. So that's when the discipline starts, because you think it's great, but really it isn't great. So you have to knuckle down and change and edit and improve and polish. And that's the really disciplined part.
And when you were writing, Brian, did you set yourself a number of words or a goal like that each day?
I set myself a number of hours a day. I would start work around about 9:30, work till about 1 or maybe 2. I found that was the limit of that was my threshold really of concentration. Some days were better than others, but generally I've set a time limit on my work.
Was there ever a point where you thought, this is just too hard, I'm going to give up?
There was a few points where I wanted to give up because it's a lot to do with confidence. First book, a lot of the time I thought, why are you doing this? This is pathetic. It's absolute rubbish. You can't go on with this. And then I would leave it and go back to it, and I would think, well, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Try this now, or try that. I think it's important to let other people read parts, but not to be too convinced by what they say, because if they're encouraging you, they're too gushing about the work, and if they're too critical, you just want to throw the whole thing in the bin. So you have to reach that fine balance in your own mind and have the confidence to know what you're doing is good. And that keeps you going, really.
Being a first-time author, Brian found it very hard to open the doors of the publishing houses. Even knocking on them drew very little response. So he had the idea of self-publishing and spoke to a couple of authors who themselves had successfully self-published and got some advice. Brian figured that if he could get his book published and looking like a proper book, he'd stand a better chance of attracting the attention of the big publishers and agents. But isn't self-publishing like cheating? Doesn't it mean anybody can write anything, publish it, and then call themselves an author?
Yes, there is a problem with people who just publish anything. I mean, there's just no feedback on what they do. They just publish. I chose a good publishing house, self-publishing house. They do want good work, and if I felt my work wasn't good enough to publish, I would never do it, because I have no ego. I'm not ego-driven that way. Some people can be. Some authors can be so self-confident and have so much self-belief that even rubbish seems good. But I've never been like that. If I didn't feel my book was good enough to publish properly, then I wouldn't have done it.
Okay, so you've self-published. The book's arrived, you've got it in your hand for the very first time. It's your new baby. I can't really imagine what that must feel like.
It was amazing, really, especially the quality of the book. And what's really important about selling the book as well is the cover. And the quality of the cover, I think, just blew me away, because it says everything about the book, really. It puts it in period, it puts it in place, and it was just marvellous to hold it there, completely done, and I'm an author, but you know.
How successful has it been?
It's been very successful on Merseyside. It's sold very well. Waterstones Liverpool One have sort of adopted it in many ways, as have all the local independent bookshops. They've all been very, very supportive and very helpful. When I approached them initially with the book, I was very hesitant, but once they'd seen it and they looked through it, and they were very impressed, and it was selling really well particularly in the independents. And the feedback they were getting from people was really good, and people were asking, when is the next one coming out? This is a bit of a cliffhanger on this book. We want to know what happens next, and that was really gratifying to get that.
So, somebody watching this now, Brian, might think, that's great, you know, I really admire what he's done. I might have a go at that myself. What advice would you have for them?
I would say, as far as self-publishing goes, if you're absolutely confident the book is high quality, go forward and self-publish. If you can't get a mainstream publisher or an agent, there's no stigma in self-publishing if your book is good enough. And also, you've got to be prepared to market and promote the book yourself. And even established authors have to do that. But for a self-published author, you have to have the drive and the confidence to push the book, to promote it, to go into bookshops. You know, it's very difficult, but you have to do that. But it's also part of the fun, actually, if you can take it.